Hi, fourth graders. I am so glad to be able to share some stories with you. But let's start out with some Valentine's jokes, okay? Good. Let's see how we can come up with this one. What did the stamp say to the envelope on Valentine's Day? It said, "I'm stuck on you." Oh, I know, pretty corny. You know, in our first story, it's about someone who is embarrassed by something that his body looks like. And I bet we all know how that is. Like, my toes are really ugly. Now you go, big deal, your toes are ugly. But in the summer, when I wear sandals, ooh, I want to walk with my toes curled under. Oh well. But listen to the story called The King's Ears and see what he was embarrassed about. In a kingdom far away, the king had ruled for many years, and he was very, very filled with generosity toward others. He was sure everyone had enough to eat, and they liked him. He didn't impose a lot of taxes on them. He was a good king. The only thing that they wondered about was he always wore his purple and yellow crown all the time. Now, of course, a king wears a crown, but he wore it all the time. Like when he would play in the town volleyball game, he wore his crown. When he would go fishing, he'd wear his crown. When he'd take walks, he'd wear his crown. They thought it was a little odd, but he was such a good king otherwise. The only other thing that was peculiar about this king was he paid highly for people to become barbers or beauticians. He sent them to school, and so there were many barbers or beauticians. The only thing odd was the barbers and beauticians kept disappearing one by one by one. But nobody could figure out why, and again, the king was very good. One of his beauticians that he had helped send through school was Maid Megan. Maid Megan was wonderful with cutting hair. She was friendly and a wonderful hair cutter. One day there came a knock on her cottage door, and he said, "Hello, Maid Megan. The king requests you come for a haircut for him." Oh, she was so thrilled. This would be the chance of her lifetime to get to cut the king's hair. Oh my gosh. She grabbed up her tools and she walked with her little suitcase behind the guards leading to the castle. When they got in the castle, they climbed and climbed and climbed some stairs, and then they opened the door, and there sat the king, and he said, "Hello, Maid Megan. I hear you are very skilled as a barber." She said, "Well, thank you, sir. I would like to say I am." He said, "Well, I'm going to sit here in the chair," and she put the cape around him, and then he lifted off his crown. Remember, she had never seen him without his crown, and now she knows why, because up popped 2 donkey ears. Donkey ears? The king had donkey ears. Maid Megan looked at him and then looked down. When she's sure she wasn't going to laugh, she looked up and said, "Well, let's begin, sir." And she gave him a magnificent haircut. As he looked in the mirror, he said, "Oh, very good, very good. Now, guards, grab Maid Marian and take her to the prison." Maid Marian said, please, you cannot take me. I take care of my ill mother. I'm all she has. She will be very poor. She would have no one to feed her. Please don't take her, please. I will never tell anybody anything about meeting you. Well, the king felt sorry for her, and he said, "Okay, but if you do, it will cost you your life. So she quickly gathered up her tools and followed the guards back down to her house. When she got there, there was a long line of people waiting for their haircuts and styles. And so she quickly got to work. And once in a while, when she was cutting the hair, she would think about the king's ears, donkey ears. And she would just go and keep cutting. And she didn't tell anybody all day long. Finally, when night came, the last customer left, and Megan walked into her mother's room. She said, "Oh dear, how was the king's haircut?" "Well, Mother, Mother, it was very good, very good. Nothing unusual. He was very nice. Thank you." Well, everyone went to bed that night, and Megan laid down. And you know how sometimes you just can't get to sleep because you can't stop thinking about something? That's the way she was. All she could remember was taking that crown off, and boing, up popped his donkey ears, and having to be so careful when she trimmed his hair that she didn't nick his donkey ears. Oh, it was terrible, and it was so funny. Oh, he's got donkey ears. But she knew she would be put to death if she told anyone. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, she finally took a walk, couldn't sleep, walked and walked deep into the forest. And she found a huge tree, a very large tree. It was a lovely tree in the moonlight. And she grabbed it and hugged it and said, "Tree, I have a secret to tell you. The king has donkey ears." And she just laughed and laughed, and no one heard it. No one heard a word, just the tree. She went about her life, and still she was known for her good haircuts, and she made a nice living, and her mother continued to be ill, but hanging in there. And one day, the king said, "You know, for my birthday, I would like to have the finest violin in the whole world. You know, have it be made of beautiful burled wood, and it would have such an exquisite sound when you played it." He called the most famous instrument maker in all of the kingdom. He called the best violinist in all of the kingdom. And the instrument maker, with consultation from the violinist, made the most beautiful violin. On the night of the king's birthday, he invited everyone to his party at the palace. And on the stage, set the violin under a spotlight. It was a gorgeous violin. Everyone whispered at it. They'd never seen wood so beautiful before. They hoped it had a wonderful sound for the king. The violinist came out on the stage, and he said, "If I may, Your Majesty," and he picked up the violin and he put it under his chin, took the bow, and he went across the strings. And rather than a beautiful sound coming out, there was, "The king has donkey ears." Everyone looked startled. The violinist almost fell backwards, and he said, "Oh, let me try again, sire." And he went a little higher on the neck and went, "The king has donkey ears." "What?" screamed the king. "What? Who told my joke?" He spun around and looked at all of his courtiers. He then looked out in the audience, and he spotted Megan. Megan, you told, I gave you your life back, and you told." She said, "Oh no, sire, I never told anybody. I never did. I have to take care of my mother. The only thing that I ever told was a tree deep in the forest, a very big tree. I could barely get my arms around it." The king looked at the forester and said, "Do you know this tree?" And he said, "Yes, Your Majesty, that's what we cut your violin from So the tree had heard Megan's whispered secret and now could only say, "The king has donkey ears." The king whirled on Megan and said, "You are going to be put to death tonight, tonight." "Oh, please don't, king, please, please don't." The ambassador stepped in by the king and said, "Sir, if I may, I know you've had donkey ears for a very long time, and I never told anybody. I don't mind if you have donkey ears." Then the head of the guard said, "Sir, you know, when I bring the barbers in for your haircut, I too know that you have donkey ears, yes, but I never told anyone, and it doesn't matter." And the other soldiers began to nod their heads, said, "We knew, we knew, we knew. We didn't think it was a big deal." "Really?" said the king. "You mean you like them?" And the whole audience applauded and said, "Yes, we like your donkey ears." So from then on, the king was seen walking up and down the village roads with his donkey ears and without his crown. He was seen playing volleyball with his donkey ears, and no one cared. So now, you know, the king has donkey ears. Hey, remember when way back around Halloween, we talked about skeletons? Well, I have a Valentine joke. Why didn't the skeleton want to send out any Valentine's cards? 'Cause his heart wasn't in it. Oh, hey, you ready for another Hercules story? I hope so. We've got to get through some more of these labors. King Eurystheus was sitting on his throne when Hercules was shown in. Herc said, "Reporting for my next impossible task, sir." And he said, "Oh, yeah, impossible task. Now, I'm not sure I remember everything. What was that you did with that big pig? That big pig. Oh, yeah, that one that was kind of boring." He said, "Your Majesty, do you mean the boar, the BOAR?" He said, "Oh, yes. How did you get that to run after you?" Oh, yes, I remember." And he said, "Oh, and last month, you had to go get those flesh-eating birds off the Stymphalian lake. How'd you do that? I never did hear how you made them fly up and then you killed them all. How did you do that?" He said, "Well, I had a whistle, sir, and I blew it and it just drove them crazy. And then I could shoot them with my arrows." He said, "Oh, okay, I'd like to hear that whistle." "Oh, no, sir. No, you wouldn't like to hear that whistle." He said, "Oh, yes, I see it right over there. Grab it." Hercules said, "It's not pleasant, sir. Are you sure you're ready?" "Yes." "Oh, stop, Hercules. Okay. By the way, your next impossible task, I've left on the list that the Chancellor has, who will let you out of the castle. So go down and talk to him." So Hercules walked down to the castle walls and found the Chancellor, and he was very busy looking through all of his pages of notes. And he said, "Herc here, sir." He said, "Herc," and he began to look. He said, "Nope, can't find Herc anywhere in here." He said, "Hercules, you know, the one that killed the 9-headed Hydra and got the skin off the Nemean lion. You know that one?" Oh, I still don't find Hercules. "No," he said, "how about impossible task? Did you find it under that?" "Well, there it is." He said, yes, let's see here. you are to go capture the Cretan bull. That sounds easy enough. Hercules said, that's impossible. And the chancellor said, that's exactly the idea, young man. Now be gone, be gone. Well, Hercules had been given permission to take a boat because he had to sail all the way down to Crete. And Crete was ruled at that time by King Minos. And he loved being king, but his brothers did not like for him being king. And they kept trying to sneak into the kingdom and kill him. So King Minos went to the edge of the shore and hollered out for his favorite Greek god, Poseidon. Now, some of you may know what Poseidon is the king of. He's the king of the seas. In Rome, they called him King Neptune, but in the Greeks, they called him King of the Sea, Poseidon. And Poseidon rose out of the water and said, yes, my son, what do you want? He said, I have these pesky brothers, and they keep trying to kill me. I wonder if you could, I heard you had a bull that maybe I could have and run off my brothers when they tried to attack. Poseidon said, oh, you don't mean my beautiful Cretan bull that lives just beyond your shores? He said, yes, let's have that one. And so he said, it'll be there in 2 days' time. And so off he went. And he said, but before you go, King Minos, here's what I want. You must sacrifice that bull 2 days after you get him, in honor of me. King Minos said, okay, yes. 2 days later, the bull showed up on the shores of the Crete island. King Minos saw it, and it was beautiful. It had a chest, like you might expect, as big as a man's arm span, that wide. And it was white, burn your eyes white. It was gorgeous, beautiful bull. Oh, King Minos just loved that bull, and he got to keep it for 2 days. And then his chancellor came to him and said, King Minos, we have to sacrifice the bull tonight. He said, and then he got a great idea. He thought, why don't I trick Poseidon? And he said, guards, come here. Get me the biggest bull on this island beside my Cretan bull. And took them a day, but they brought back the biggest bull on the island. And he said, now paint them white. What? Paint them white? Paint them white? Okay, whatever you say. And they did that. They painted them white. And the next morning, just before dawn, a large fire had been built, and the bull was sacrificed in honor of Poseidon. Except it wasn't the Cretan bull, remember? Now, let me tell you, you don't mess around with Greek gods. Poseidon heard about it and was so angry, he almost caused a hurricane. And so he thought, I know what I will do. And he caused King Minos' wife to fall in love with the Cretan bull. And they had a child that was half man and half bull. It was called a minotaur. Oh, King Minos was so angry and so embarrassed he had gotten caught that he had a huge labyrinth built. A labyrinth is like a maze, except this one was inescapable. And he had his soldiers move the minotaur, his stepson, to that maze. Phew, done with him. Meanwhile, he can enjoy the Cretan bull. And indeed he did. But that Cretan bull got wilder and wilder and wilder. And it, like, one day went and ate up a whole village. Then the king got even a little more upset when it ate up his all of his wine cellar. So when Hercules showed up, sailing in from King Eurystheus' kingdom, he said, "King Minos, I have been sent here to capture your Cretan bull." Minos said, "Yay! Oh, okay, well, you can have him if you can catch him. He's very large and he's very mean. Yes, yeah, go ahead and take him if you can catch him." Well, Hercules was not only very strong, he was very smart. And he immediately began to study the bull all day and all night, hidden down in some of the reeds. And he noticed the thing about this bull was it had a very unusually long tail. And he thought, that's what I will do. He waited the next night till the bull was sound asleep. And you can imagine that a bull snores. So, and he snuck up behind the bull and he grabbed it by its tail. Immediately the Cretan bull jumped to its feet and began to run around in circles trying to knock Hercules off. But Hercules had huge, strong hands, and he held and he ran behind the bull all over the island of Crete. They ran up a mountain. They ran down a mountain. They ran into the ocean. They ran back out of the ocean. Around every nook and cranny of the kingdom, they ran and ran with Hercules holding on behind. Finally, on the 6th morning, the bull collapsed into a sleep. Hercules thought, good, now's my chance. And he got hold of the bull's tail and slung him over his head like a lasso and boom, had him land on his massive shoulders. Then he strode to the boat where his loyal sailors were waiting, and he propped him down and said, tie him up, guys. And they tied the bull up and then set sail as fast as they can because they wanted to get to King Eurystheus' kingdom before that bull woke up again, because otherwise it would be terrible. And they did. Just as the bull was waiting, they landed, put down the gangplank, and King Eurystheus was greeted by Hercules carrying the sleepy bull into the kingdom. Threw that white alabaster bull down and said, "It's all yours, sir, the Cretan bull." Well, King Eurystheus, true, also loved that bull, just like King Minos had, until it also ate up a village, ate a wine cellar, and destroyed the statue of himself that he had just had carved. So he sent that bull off to a town named Marathon. But that's another story. So that is the story of the Cretan bull. And let me send you away with one last Valentine riddle. What did the two birds say on Valentine's Day? They said, "Let me call you Tweetheart." You've heard my stories and you've listened well. Now they are yours to tell. Thank you for listening so well. Goodbye.